Rulelord Nation, it's your frosty and refreshing Rulelord here, Pete. And I have said a couple of times that I love third-party games, especially if they're third-party platforms for Pathfinder. And so I'm very happy to have Smunchy Games here with me today to talk about their latest Kickstarter taking place in the cold, frigid place of Candulhurst or Naltulth. So Sean, first off, tell me, what are your pronouns? Tell me a little bit about Smunchy Games, and how do you say Naltulth? Did I say it right?
No, but we'll start with
Okay.
your first question. So I am he, him. Those are my pronouns. The way to say it is Naltulth.
Naltulth. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a reason behind that. We can get into that later if you'd like. I forgot the second question already.
Tell us a bit about Smunchy Games. What have you guys done in the past?
Cool. Yeah. So in the past, we had done we'd done a small card game called Fray, and then we actually had a decent sized Kickstarter with a indie tabletop RPG system and setting called Parslanes. It actually went over pretty well. Right now, it's almost completely fulfilled, which is great. So
It is?
yeah, even in all of these delays and these time of life we live in. So
Yeah.
we were kind of surprised by that. But yeah, other than that, I mean, we're breaking into the Pathfinder second edition scene for the first time. And I mean, we've been dealing with tabletop for a while now. The company Smunchy Games actually started in 2015. So
Okay, so pretty recent.
yeah, yep. And we actually started with our own world and system called Path's World of Adia.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually goes to Kickstarter next year.
Okay. Cool.
Yep, it's taken us 6 years to finish development.
Where's the name Naltulth come from?
Actually, it's cool that you asked that because Naltulth, it is the word that the deity Darkspire whispered when they created the continent.
Okay.
So the word, more or less, it means in their ancient tongue, which is all called Driokenai, means survive.
So it sounds like this is a pretty new setting, different world than Galarian, where most Pathfinder players might be familiar. So tell me a bit about that setting, and is Naltulth part of what is going to be a larger project?
Yeah, so funny enough, what we've done with Naltulth is we kind of made it almost like unofficial Galarian in a way. It's to kind of like weave in to what already exists in Pathfinder, because we can't use Galarian directly unless now we run Infinite, right? But yes, it's a part of a much larger project. Naltulth, this will be the first of many to come, many books. Naltulth Candulhurst in this case, because Candulhurst is the primary town we focus on, but there's many other locations. So from there, like right now, if I remember correctly, I think we're actually looking between 5 to 10 different books in the future.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot going into this, and it does link into other settings that we have planned in the future. We plan to be around for a while because the thing about Naltulth is that it is exclusive. We're making it exclusively for Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Yeah, I saw that. And frankly, as someone who is a little frustrated that I can't find anything that isn't exclusive to 5e, it's really cool to see something that's exclusive to 2e, my game of choice. So why did you choose to go just with 2e and not either 2e plus 5e or 5e exclusively?
Yeah, with Naltulth, this was very much it was a special thing for me personally. Just one, because the content creators in general, the people who are making Pathfinder 2nd Edition, have put a lot of love into it. It's kind of me, I guess, stepping up and saying, hey, it's worth it. Other third-party publishers should be doing this. They've done a lot of work with it, and they do care. They care a lot about the system. They care a lot about the people who play. And with it being modularly designed, which is amazing, in my opinion, it makes it easier, too. It's actually, oddly enough, and it's going to be really weird me saying this, but it's easier to develop for Pathfinder 2nd Edition than it is for 5th Edition D&D.
Wow. I knew that Pathfinder was pretty easy because I've been doing 1E to 2E conversions, but I haven't touched 5E ever in my whole life. So that is pretty cool to hear. If you hear that, developers, hope you take it to heart. We love 2E and we want to see more stuff for it. So when I was looking over the preliminary Kickstarter for this stuff, part that caught my eye was that it looks like there's going to be a civil war kind of at the heart of this book. Curious, is this going to be like Skyrim, where you can join either the Imperials or the Nords, and are there like different reasons to join each side, or is one going to be kind of like the de facto bad guy and one person the one that you really want to be part of?
That's such a good question. I hadn't considered it, but it's not that it couldn't be a possibility, right? Because the Blight Shadow, the difference between the Blight Shadow and the Darkspire Undead, which, yes, they are in civil war, and while you would think that there would be some complex political difference, it's actually very black and white. It is more or less Darkspire doesn't force undeath upon their followers. Where the Blight Shadow do, and that's the difference. So it's very cut and dry, and the Blight Shadow want to see everything living become undeath. That's really their main goal. They believe that Darkspire having such empathy toward the living is wrong, but Darkspire obviously believes that you should have empathy toward the living, and then give them a second survival chance. First survival is what they call it. Sorry.
So definitely an empire versus rebellion.
Yep.
Feel a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
So what can people expect from the book? Like, what's it ultimately going to be about?
Yeah, there's so much that we could go through. So we have, in this situation, while it is a setting, and you can definitely expect, a map, like almost like an isometric map of Candulhurst, and even like a continental map of Naltulth. You're really going to be getting a lot of the value out of the new heritages that you see posted there. And then also the ancestries, which is funny because in this case, we've released one of them. We've announced one of them. There's actually a second one that we're hiding.
Ooh, okay.
And we don't know if it'll show up in this book or if it'll show up in the next book. So we're kind of keeping that one under wraps right now. But there's a lot more to look forward to on that. And then, of course, the archetype, the Crypt Knight, which is interesting because we actually put out a poll a little while ago, and it more or less was talking about what do people want to see from the Crypt Knight? Do they want to see it as an actual class or an archetype? And archetype won in that polling. And the reason that was so fascinating to us is that people wanted more freedom. So what we're doing is this archetype isn't going to just be a single page archetype. You're actually going to get 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 pages of feats to select from this archetype. And it kind of makes sense because the Crypt Knight is not just undead. Like they are undead, but it's 2 forms of undead. So you have like, corpse life, like the living, right? Humans, other beings and creatures. But then you also have plant life. So you have trees like, snags and mushrooms and other things like that. So it goes hand in hand with the Crypt Knight, which is actually pretty interesting. And then, and beyond that, really, there are tons of different creatures. You are going to have some new crafting rules that are going to be in there, as well as materials. And there's so much that my brain's exploding. There's a lot of lore too. So
I'll touch on a lot of it.
Yep.
So I was looking at this new Crypt Knight archetype, and it looks really, really interesting. Something that the Kickstarter notes is that they focus on haunts and putrefaction. So what does that mean, and how does it fit into the setting?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So haunts are our way of easing people into this kind of, it borders the line of dark fiction, right? It's not quite dark fiction, but it's there. And the way that haunts are used mechanically anyway is you are being haunted by a creature or by something, right? And you can actually take that haunt and turn it to do your bidding. You can also actually put a haunt into a corpse or into like a twisted snag, which is like a dead tree. You can put it into that and also have it as your minion, more or less.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's going to be pretty fun with the haunts overall, but it's a lot of like dealing damage, having minions, things of that nature. Where more of the putrid, like the putrefaction or putrefaction is more about understanding and like playing on that that almost like the plagues kind of, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
focused on like negative energy. So like
Mhm.
in Pathfinder, and it also plays into something we have called blightwashing, which
Hmm.
is a form of crafting. So you can actually take the bones, or yeah, mostly the bones or other things from the blight shadows that you destroy, and craft
Mhm.
equipment with those bones. And it
Okay.
plays into your weaponry as well. So your weapon actually speaks to you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I was looking at those new crafting rules. So, how well does that incorporate with the current 2e crafting rules? Like, are you going to be able to take this into any setting, or is it going to be pretty exclusive to your setting in Naltulth?
Yeah, no, you can take it into any setting that you want. As
Ooh,
long as you
okay.
can, of course, obtain those materials, you can use it.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where that works. And we did that on purpose because, with Naltulth, as far as how we crafted it, because it's kind of like this unofficial Galarian type of sidestep,
Hmm.
it'll go beyond this. So, things like the Nice Spear Kingdom is still like we're considering an unofficial Galarian content. Um,
Hmm.
and kind of playing off that so you can weave it into the other parts of Pathfinder. We did that on purpose.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So there are going to be some new heritages. That's part of what caught my eye initially about this was seeing the different versions of orc and kobold and stuff that you have.
Hmm.
So tell us a little bit more about them and what makes them mechanically unique.
Cool. Yeah. So let's see. We can start with. I guess we can start with the Blind Strike Orc. So the Blind Strike Orcs, there's a lot of there's of course a lot of fluff and world building to it too. But the one thing about the Blind Strike Orcs is their eyes have been replaced with magical eyes given by Darkspire. And there's quite a few things that can be done with them. It just kind of
Hmm.
depends, I guess, on how you play it, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Like one of the main first level feats that you'll be able to get is called with my special eyes.
Okay. Like that commercial. I love it.
Yeah. And in this case, you're more or less you're able to gain some like bonus actions for the site. Help them. You're like able to guide your strikes better, things of
Hmm.
that nature. The second thing though that's really fascinating about the Blind Strike Orcs is that you can also tunnel and like tunnel through ice mountains if you really wanted to, just with your fists.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting for an orc because you when you think about an orc, you're like burrowing and ambushing is not a thing that you would think for someone of that size per se, but
Hmm.
that's what they do. So,
It to me makes a lot of sense, given like the lore of the orcs of Pathfinder having come from, was it that they started and then they met the dwarfs halfway
oh
going
yeah,
underground?
yep.
Either way, but like underground is definitely a big part of like their nature in Pathfinder lore, so I think that fits really well. What about these kobolds?
Oh, so the Gravehand Kobolds, they're my favorite. Just to
Hmm.
be honest with you.
They look really cool.
I love them so much. They're all about very specific colors of like white, black, grays, purples in color. They
Hmm.
do it though to honor Darkspire. So they'll like paint their hand and place it on their face, and then they feel like they've invigorated themselves with power. Which actually,
Hmm.
in some cases, they do. So if they choose a certain color, they actually gain a certain resistance to whatever they've chosen. Um,
Oh, cool.
yeah, yeah, and not in this setting book, but in the future, in another book, we're actually going to include something called Paint Elders, and they're part of the Gravehand Kobolds heritage. So there's a lot of
Oh,
culture there as
okay.
well. But yeah, it's if I remember correctly, yeah, it's here first level feat. Art has power, and I am a canvas. So
I love that.
yep. So white is cold damage resistance, black is negative damage resistance, and purple is force damage resistance. So
Okay.
yep.
That makes a lot of
And then we
sense.
kind of played into their draconic piece a little bit too,
Hmm.
but it revolves more around the dark flame and what Darkspire is about.
Okay.
So yeah, like and we even went as far. I forgot about this. It's a 13 level feat. It's called the Flight of the Unliving. And you kind of like
Hmm.
form wings on your back, little dark spire
Ooh.
wings, and you can
Yeah.
you can do a lot of cool things with it. So
I'm sure that makes the kobolds really happy. You actually feel dragon like again.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly where we were going to.
I love these goblins. They still have that kind of cutesy, paizo-y look to them, but also almost an extra level of sinisterness to them.
Yeah, that dark milled goblin. They, they're so much fun, and I actually even reached out to Paizo at one point. I was like, is it okay if we like take this look and feel? They're like, yeah, that's what it's there for, as long as it's your own setting. And I was like, okay, cool, great. And they're all about wielding the powerful shadow type of magic, this necromancy. And I put this in personally as a joke, but if you catch the reference, the name of the first level feat is called My Life for Darkspire. Which is
I don't understand that reference.
That's all right. It's actually
I'm sure it's super clever.
It's a StarCraft reference. My Life for Ire.
Okay.
Yeah. So in this case, I meshed the two, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. But more often than not, you gain the Summon Darkspire Link cantrip,
okay,
where you can actually essentially talk to others from a very long distance through this Darkspire Link. They're all about the necromancy sense, but they also gain something called Darkmilled Rider. And they can essentially, this is kind of a play on the core rules. And we talk about, there is a creature called a Gontantula, and it allows them to ride a goblin spider mount, which is a Gontantula.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's cool. Really cool. Yeah. And then it doesn't look like it's part of the base set, but a goal we can look forward to are catfolk, extra heritage for the catfolk. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so when we were looking at the catfolk as a whole, and I was like, you know what, I kind of want to take Darkspire Steel to the next level, and it's a crafting item in this setting. And I was like, what if we had these catfolk that were more or less magical Wolverine?
Ooh, okay.
And not only if they were magical Wolverine, imagine them as like assassins or bounty hunters,
right?
And that's kind of the direction we took with this. So they have their claws are made of Darkspire steel.
Okay,
they're naturally formed out of this because they were created by Darkspire. They're all undead.
Oh, okay.
Yep, which is really interesting too. And so they have like a special unarmed attack, and it's called Grimclaw. But then they also have a lot of these like cloak and dagger abilities. So like we have something called Darkmeld Deathmark, which allows you to essentially mark the prey and like listen to feats, but you can also, or to their footsteps, but you can also do other marked things with it, such as maybe something is frightened, and they'll have to make a save on that. All the way up.
Tell me one of their feats is called Snicked.
No, maybe now it needs to be. That's pretty good. But yeah, it's all revolving around Darkspire as usual. So,
and then there is also going to be at least one new ancestry. It sounds like the Anatorok.
Yep, the Anatorok,
which looks super cool. For that, this is an audio medium, so let me describe them to people. They're like purple skinned. They got 4 arms and looks like no mouth, with flames coming from at least one pair of the arms. So this is a really cool looking ancestry. It goes way outside of the conventional Tolkien kind of pantheon. So how'd you come up with this, and what can we look forward in this ancestry?
Yeah, so actually they do have a mouth. There are a lot of like sharp teeth. They just kind of open up.
Oh, okay.
But then they have tusks, right?
And, okay, so that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
all right.
But they have like no nose, right? It's like a skull hole almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, with their long ears. It's funny how these kind of got birthed into existence, because it's almost like, I don't know, my own weird love letter to metal music. I've always enjoyed the types of ancestries and people that had these types of features, these almost metal type of features, where they have the tusks, and they have the pointed ears, and they have the sharp teeth or skulls, right? They got like 4 eyes. And that's how it actually started, is like I was sitting there listening to Death Clock, funny enough. And as Death Clock was playing Awaken, I was like, this is perfect. And then I started writing, and I came out with their War Scribe clans, is what they're called. and that's a part of their culture. And they worship a deity called Ayanka, and she is their war scribe deity. So they're all about like war and other things like that. I mean, they kind of have to be based on the Blight Shadow and the gasping leviathans that they have to hunt and all that. But the cool thing about their hands, we do give players the option to play with four arms. If you do, you break your essentially sacred passage with Ayanka, so you kind of break that deity relation. But you can use four arms and four hands. But if you do keep your two hands as magic wielding, you keep that deity relationship. Now, the thing about the Anatarok, even though they're very combat like looking and heavy related, they're actually more role playing related in the way we built them mechanically, and that is because the hands are meant as a visual language.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So like a sign language sort of.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's called Fire Talk. And they can communicate with one another through using imagery within the magical flame. And they can sign into it. They can and they can speak too if they want. They have their language is called Ontung, but in this case Fire Talk is very special because they can do it on a 1-to-1 level, but they can also shoot it into the sky and communicate that way.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they're going to be pretty neat.
That definitely looks like an ancestry that I think people would want to choose, whether they're playing Naltulth or something else.
Right.
So that's really cool. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, looking over these ancestries is the artwork is so good. This isn't just like sketches or something, or like this weird assortment of different styles. Like it looks like a very Paizo consistent level of artwork. So tell me a little bit about the art design that went behind this.
Yeah. So, oh man, where do we begin? That's the one thing, especially with what we wanted to do for Naltulth, is because again, we're making this exclusively for Pathfinder 2nd edition. So we did two things. The first thing we did is I went pretty deep on the world building, and I went deep on how to design this concept overall. And actually, I studied the 2nd edition books and even the older Pathfinder books probably for about a month and a half, just in style. And I really wanted to nail down what those features were. And then digging deeper into that, because I'm also an illustrator. I have a very different style than what you see though on in there. But I designed every single character, creature, armor piece that you see. That was me.
Okay.
And I ended up putting it also into words at the same time. And I work closely with one of our lead artists, Payo. Payo, he is an illustrator he's been working with me for, about 4 years now. I'd consider him a very good friend too. And I asked him, I said, hey, can you mimic not only the styles here, these are the studies I learned, and this is how I want to craft this vibe and feel consistent wise. And he's like, yeah, I can absolutely do that. And sure enough, he pumped the very first piece he put out was the Dark Melt Goblin, because we know how important goblins are to Paizo.
Yeah.
And he nailed it.
Yeah, he definitely did.
So I'm like, okay, cool. Next one, Kobold. Do the Grave Hand Kobold. And then he nailed that one.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So it's been a great partnership, as always. I mean, at Smunchy Games, we have other artists that we work with, of course, but for this particular project, PAO, and then we also have Anton Ninov, who is the environmental artist. So all of the large, like Candulhurst, when you go and look and you see the shores right off the docks, that's Anton's work. So it's two different artists, and then I wanted to meld them, and that's kind of where it went.
Well, it looks amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the art looks spectacular. And there are actually a lot of additional pieces of artwork, it looks like, with a little mini bestiary of completely new creatures that you're adding to the 2E toolbox. So tell us a little bit about these new creatures and like which one's your favorite.
Yeah. So outside of the Blight Shadow, because we are including a Blight Shadow Skullkeeper, which is level 20, just to throw, a big bad in there. And there are going to be other Blight Shadows too that are locked in stretch goal. We wanted to supply, though, the actual creatures within the book. And in this mini bestiary, yeah, you're right. So we have the Chirpgower, the Trellgwyn, the Icy Lock, the Gontantula, and the Mortis Monarch. Those are the first that come to mind. And I guess I'll start with the Chirpgower. So the Chirpgower has slowly become everyone's favorite because
It is mine. It looks sort of like a gorilla with an elk,
yeah,
and then just white polar bear like fur.
that's right. Yep. Yeah, it's become a favorite of everyone's, and it makes sense because of what they are and how they act and all the things they can do. So the funny thing about the Chirpgower is they got their name because they actually say their name. It's Chirpgower.
Hmm.
That's the sound they
Okay.
make. um, and
So you're bringing Pokemon into
a little
2E
bit,
world.
yeah, just a little bit. um, and we, they're both terrifying yet cuddly,
Hmm.
because they can actually camouflage themselves, uh,
Oh, okay.
very quickly. Almost like that, maybe like an active camo you might see in sci-fi, where it kind of looks invisible, but it's not when they're moving, right?
Hmm.
So there's that. But it's how they move around quickly, and they can absolutely destroy something or someone if they need to. Um,
Hmm.
However, they will use their antlers to chip out the ice, and they'll actually eat the ice. That's how they'll consume water and
Okay.
consumption for that, so they don't dehydrate.
Hmm.
But yeah, normally they're in herds, and kind of like you would find like an elk, right? But you can
Hmm.
kind of imagine them like running across the tundra, like with their arms, kind of like an ape. And
Yeah.
the interesting thing about them though is you can actually tame them, and you can also ride them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so they're pretty large. And we had someone make a joke earlier within the last few months about how they wanted to be a Chirpgower rancher and just have this ice ranch of Chirpgowers, and I was like,
Right.
all right, that's pretty cool. Didn't think about that one, but that's awesome. So, but I would say that's definitely one of my favorites is the Chirpgower.
Hmm.
I would say my absolute favorite is actually the Trollgwen, personally. And
Okay. And that's kind of this purple looking rat thing with a bird beak and tusks.
yeah,
You think is that accurate way to
um,
describe it?
sort of. It's actually we're calling it the Doom Penguin.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that's just been the nickname everyone's been giving it, but more or less,
Mhm.
it is a mix. The best way I can describe it, it's a mix of a troll and a penguin put together. And
It's not a common combination I
right,
think many
yeah,
people would go with.
exactly. And I think what makes them, why they're my favorite, and actually why they're the most terrifying, is when you think of a
Hmm.
penguin, you think of something pretty cuddly. Um,
Yeah.
but when you think of a Trellguin, it's the complete opposite. And if you take everything that a penguin does and you put it into this type of creature, you start to rethink about how dangerous a penguin actually is.
Yeah.
So we gave this creature tusks, and more or less, a penguin will lay on their tummy and kind of slide right
Right.
across. Now imagine a Trellguin doing that.
Oh, and coming right at
Coming
you with
right at
those two tusks. Wow. Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, don't get impaled by the tusks, right?
Hmm.
But then they'll if they do get their prey, then they'll actually carry it off in their beak and go off into their caves and holes. So they're great swimmers, which is kind of scary too.
Yeah. Something that I love about this setting in this game particularly is like how it's focused in a colder region, and that's something I've really been wanting to see from 2E. Like
Yep.
I love that area, those settings, Rime of the Frost Maiden, Reign of Winter. Those are games that I desperately want to play just because they're like in cold environments. It's like what made you go with this colder area and make creatures that kind of fit within that setting?
I'm the same way as you. I love the colder regions. That's been an absolute favorite of mine, which is actually going to be a surprise to a lot of people listening to this, by the way. Because anyone who knows me over at Smunchy Games, I'm always sitting there talking about jungles and like southern, like hot desert regions. But
Hmm.
my favorite regions are the cold regions, and
Mhm.
I want to do them right. And I don't know, I've just been enamored with it since I was young. I mean, the two things that, like, yeah, exactly, Rime of the Frost Maiden, that was one that was kind of inspiring this a little bit. The other one, of course, is Wrath of the Lich King from a long time ago, right? Even before that, Frozen Throne. So there's some Warcraft vibes in here. You can kind of tell, and that's really where that inspiration came from. For such a long time, it's like basically in my blood at this point. So, and yeah, I wanted to see
Ice
that
runs
too.
through your veins.
Yeah, exact icy veins. There you go. Yep.
So something that I always think a couple people are trepidatious about is getting a third party made game, and like, is this going to stand up to the level of quality of like the main makers of the game? So how well would you say that the mechanics of this fit in with someone who might want to bring in the elements of Naltulth into like a Paizo adventure path like Abomination Vaults?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, right? Because Abomination Vaults, that's a campaign. And you can absolutely do that. There's going to be a lot of different mechanic pieces that you can pull out of this, and purposely modular, right? That was the way that the system was designed in general, from my understanding. And this should allow you to take that and either take it straight out of the box as it is, or even take it and make your own if that's what you really want to do. I think, if I had to give it like an 8 out of 10, we're not perfect. So I'd probably call it an 8. That's just being honest. And that's because something that we like to do is we do like to focus on more role play mechanics.
Okay.
But that's not to say that things like the crafting or, certain creatures or how some of these heritages are played or ancestries doesn't mean that we won't have those crunchier types of concepts, I guess.
This is starting on Kickstarter on October 5th, which, given my record of getting to editing, may have already happened. But what kind of stretch goals can people look forward to as this campaign progresses?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, something really interesting about Naltulth, we originally started this project as something very small, as in we were only going to release 30 pages of a super micro setting and be like, hey, people go play with it. Oddly enough, and I guess fortunately for us, it expanded far beyond that.
Yeah.
It kind of got to the point to where those on the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Reddit were requesting it. We had people in the world building Reddit request it. Twitter, Facebook. We even had some of even the Paizo employees notice it, which we did not expect, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
So this is definitely out of left field for us. So what we started with is right now what we're kind of looking at for stretch goals. So the Grimclaw is a stretch goal. They're the first stretch goal. We would love to add them, of course, but because this started off as such a small project, we are being honest with ourselves as creators so we can get the funding to make more, right? The second one is the archetype. It's the Crypt Knight. So if you want that, that's going to be another stretch goal. And then from there on out, you're kind of looking at some of the Blight Shadow creatures are going to be added up until about roughly 15,000. And that's because these Blight Shadow creatures, while they are important, they're not critical to this right now. And we can always release them in a future book. So it kind of just depends on what people want.
Right.
And then, of course, we also have the Ancestry upgrade. So what we're doing is we're going to go into the Fire Talk and how the Anautarok use it and put in much more detail and actually possibly even turn that into its own like language and system, which would be so I mean it is a language, but like actually go pretty deep into it. Make it much more versatile, maybe is what I should say. Beyond that, we have other locked stretch goals. But right now we're just kind of playing it safe to see where this is going to go. Again, it'll probably surprise us as usual. And then from there, if we get beyond the 15,000 goal, maybe we will see the new Ancestry show up with its new heritage as well. So,
ooh, okay, y'all heard it. We have goals to reach. I hope everyone listening to this will go check out the Kickstarter, throw support their way. The more that we are able to help people with these third-party products, the more lifeblood, I think, will be added to Pathfinder 2nd edition as a whole. And speaking totally honest, and Smudgy Games isn't paying me any money to say this, I am super interested in this setting. I really want to see more of it coming in the future. So I really hope that you have good luck with your Kickstarter. So with that, where can people find out more about Naltulth, more about Smudgy Games, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so first off, I appreciate that shout out and just the compliment. It means a lot, and we agree. I wanted to do this because I'm hoping that the third-party publishing work for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, other third-party publishers jump on. I really want to see that happen. And if not, we will just continue. So either way, I mean, we're going to anyway, but you know what I mean. As far as where you can read more about Naltulth, you can go to smunchygames.com, and Naltulth is on there, I think, under games. You can read about it there. You can learn, of course, follow us on social media at Smunchy Games. Pretty much everywhere that you look, we're there. Whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we're even on TikTok, which is interesting. Super small presence there, but we're even there if that's where you want to get your content. You can even join our mailing lists. So if you do want to join the mailing list, you can do that. But yeah, that's where we're primarily going to be posting. And then, of course, there is right now you can get notified to when the Kickstarter launches. So you can do that as well.
Awesome. Well, I am very excited for this. You definitely have at least one backer right now. So hopefully you get a lot more. With that, we're going to end the podcast. Again, I really wish you success. And listeners, tell us what you think about Naltulth. Tweet me at Rulelord2E or go to rulelord2e.com to look up how to listen to this podcast on other platforms. Find my Patreon or send me an email with rulelord2e@gmail.com. And until next session,
don't let the rules rule you.